This is CoinTrader96 from Chart Engineers, and today I'm going to review the trades I took this week. I took 4 trades. It's my Notion. I took 4 trades, 1 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and 1 on Wednesday. And on 70 are in 4 trades. So I did, after Wednesday London Open, I decided to call it a week and record my market recap right after, so I can relax and the price action is still fresh in my mind, so I can explain it better, I think, instead of Sunday or Saturday. So yeah, let's go over to the first trade I took on Monday and why I took it. So I'm going to explain my thought process, and I hope you guys and girls understand why I'm taking these trades and learn something from it. So yeah, here's EURUSD, H4 time frame. At first sight, you can't see a lot of things happening because these 2 candles on the right side are from Monday's trading. Here's a vertical line. It's basically the weekly open, and here you can see the 2 H4 candles after. And with this H4 chart, we cannot really define what price could do near term in London Open. All we had was this H4 of our value gap here. And price stepped into it and moving a little bit lower, and we have a H4 of our value gap sitting below. So this could potentially be the draw intra week, and we had a lot of swing lows resting above this H4 of our value gap. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 swing lows, so triple bottom here and 1 swing low here, so lots of liquidity resting below. So my idea was that price could reach for that level. But for the short term, there was not a lot of information I could use to define what London Open might do. So when that's the case, I zoom into the H1. That's the only exception I'm making with the H1 time frame. On the H1, there's a little bit more detail, which could help me define the next direction. Here you can see how price came into the H4 of our value gap on Friday, moved lower, opened here, and grinding a little bit. And you can see how price formed a swing low, H1 swing low. And on next close, you can see how price broke that swing low. See that? So there was a break and mark structure on the H1. So at this point, with the idea that H4 could go lower, I was short biased for London Open. Here as well, H1 fair value gap, price came into it, broke down, even creating a H1 swing high within. I marked it out for myself because it could potentially get raided. So I was waiting for price to take out that high into the fair value gap, form an M5 setup, and then set it lower. Here you can see at 8 AM there's London Open, so let me mark out the time zone indicator. And here you can see how H1 tapped into that high. Let me go back to that candle, zoom into the M5. So you can see the H1 high was resting above, also M5 equal highs. So I was hoping for price to tap that out and then roll lower. So let's see what happens. London Open starts, you can see that, 8 AM, price raiding that high, pushing down lower. And at this point I was debating with myself whether this M5 close counts as a sweep, but the entire context fits for short, so it was quite an easy decision for me. So I decided to count this as a raid, and I count this as a M5 mark structure low. So here, with the M5 mark structure break for me, and at this point I zoom to the M1 to frame my setup, and now I just mark out the breaker zone from the last swing low, from the last down candle till the sweep. So this entire zone here, my breaker zone. And let me measure how many pips this level is. 4.9 pips, so it's a valid region for me. So let me mark out the FIB tool real quick. So yeah, at this point M5 broke down, and I set my limits in this breaker zone at the bottom with stops above. My target was at 3R and a little bit more to cover for fees. And let me play this out now. Here's my fill. You can see lots of drawdown. You can see here was my fill, and you can see how price is running up, almost taking me out, but it never invalidated my ID. And from that point, it just fell off quite nicely. You can see I got my TP at 9:30, so I was basically done for the day, because after a win I'm just sitting out and just analyzing. And yeah, that was it for Monday. Quite clean PA, H4 alignment, H1 alignment, and then M5 rating the H1 high inside the H1 fair value gap, M5 breakdown, marking out the M1 breaker zone, and then set it down. So basically from higher time frame to lower time frame. So here's Tuesday's trading. On the right side of this vertical line you can see two H4 candles, which are Tuesday's trading. And again, there's not a lot of information I could use on the H4 to define what London Open is going to do. We still have this H4 fair value gap below, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 H4 swing lows sitting above this H4 fair value gap. So price could potentially reach for these lows and take the liquidity for next leg up. But other than that, there was not a lot of information that I could use on the H4. So in that case, I go to the H1 to find more clues. So yeah, all this price action here is Tuesday's trading, and you can see on Monday we rated a H1 high right there, and then we broke market structure to the downside. Market structure, and with the idea that price could reach for the H4 fair value gap below and take out all these lows, I was short biased for London Open. So I was marking out H4 fair value gaps where price could get into for potential short. H4 fair value gap right there. So what I wanted price to do was tap into this level, maybe a little bit higher, and then move lower. And so let's go over to the M5 real quick and mark out the kill zone session. Let me go real quick. So here, London Open started at 8 AM. You can see our price pushing up to fill up this H1 fair value gap. So at this point, you can see you can see there was a consolidation here, right, with some raids and some stacks. So let me mark out what we got here. Okay, swing high. Raid. It was a break above, but then a quick rejection away from the high. So I count this as a breaker zone for on the M5 fractal, and then we also had the M5 high within. So I'm not blindly selling these levels. I'm personally waiting for price to give me the confirmation, a rate within with a market structure break to confirm my short ID, because I am short bias at this point. So we're currently filling in the H1 fair value gap. We are pushing up, and then you can see London Open manipulation, move down, push up, take out liquidity within this M5 fractal. So at this point I was aggressively looking for shorts, because we still had the H4 draw below. H1 was bearish, and this was nothing more than a suspect ready for me, especially how London Open pushed into the level. So in my eyes it was pure manipulation, and I was very convinced that price was rolling lower from this rate. And you can see the M5 sweep there. At this point I was aggressively looking for shorts. I didn't need an M5 break because the M5 swing low was all the way here, and if price wanted lower, it's not going to wait for this to break. So I went to the M1, marked out the breaker zone here. We also had a market structure break there, swing low before the high. This was the MSB. So at this point I'm in limits in this level with stops above, and then I was aiming for 3R from this level initially, and you can see, let's play it out a little bit. Price was rolling lower, and I was so convinced that price was going to roll lower. So let me remove this. I was so convinced that price was going to roll lower, and I was seeing this M1 AMD accumulation, manipulation, distribution. So I told myself, okay, When this low breaks, I'm going to trail this stop, break even, and then add a compound in this level, in this AMD structure. So here with the kind of a breaker zone without a rate, but the AMD pattern was enough for me to use it as a setup. And then here break a mark structure, so I set a new limit in this level. And my limit in this level stops above, and it stops from this position where I break even. So I was still risking the same, and I just added a new position in this level. And you can see how price taps into the level with 0 drawdown, and then push away real nicely. So at this point, the higher level was TP'd, and this compa was also TP'd for a total of 7R on Tuesday London Open. So that was a very nice play of me. You can see that. With this setup right here, you can see how I entered on this level. I missed the first step because it was quite early and I was still in bed basically. And then I entered on the second tap. I was lucky that they gave me a second chance to enter. Moved lower. You can see here the compound AMD accumulation manipulation distribution. So I added the limit here, stops above. And you can see how price moved lower very nicely for a total of 7R. So that was it for Tuesday's trading. And you can see on the H1 how the fair value gap held. You see that? The bodies were still below the fair value gap. However, the wick was higher, but that doesn't really matter. And the fair value gap held, in my opinion. You can see how the fair value gap, see the bodies were still closing below the EQ of this fair value gap. So yeah, that was a very successful London Open for me. Nice setup. Nice alignment of the H4 again. H4 draw below. H1 broke structure here, so I was expecting sells, and I was aggressively looking for sells when price was confirming it for me on the M5. Because we had a very nice rate into the M5 fractal. You see that? Rate, break and mark structure. Let me mark out the break and mark structure real quick here. See? Broke structure. Gave retest already very early for a nice trade. Came back into it. Very suspect rally in my eyes. London Open kicked in. Push into it. M5 rate. A nice sell off again. And M5. And then the M1 for refinement. On Tuesday, the same day, I had another setup in New York Open. Because we had the CPI news release from dollar. And that usually gives some nice volatility. Some nice plays. And yeah, so let's go over the trade real quick. So let me mark out this breaker zone, yeah, on the H1. H1 breaker zone. And this was the reaction in London Open. It gave us a nice short. Let me move it real quick. And at this point I was still thinking that price may tap into the H1 breaker zone. Let me, nice push into it. So at this point I was again looking for shorts. And there was another short here. I personally missed it. Because here there was an M5 rate on MT4. Rate. On MT4 this was a sweep. I don't know if it was a sweep on FXCM, but I don't care that much. MSB. So here we get the M5 fractal into the H1 breaker zone. So we had a nice M5 fractal into this M5 breaker zone. Into this H1 breaker zone, I mean. And it was still within session, and I didn't take it because I already had my short setup wins in London Open earlier. And here with the break. And I think some people in the group took this very clean. Look, here with the M1 breaker zone. So M5 sweep, M5 break, mark out the M1 breaker zone. And I think this setup also banged. See, 0 drawdown. It took some time though, but in the end I think they TP'd from there to here. It took some time though. And then here I think smashed into the target. Right there, 3R was hit. 0 drawdown. It took some time, and then here was the TP. I didn't take this trade, but it was very clean because we were inside this H1 breaker zone. M5 fractal within. M1 breaker zone, retest, and then 3R was hit. I didn't take this one, but I just want to review it real quick. But let's go over to the New York Open session, because the New York Open session was quite nice. It was a very nice PA. New York Open was starting right here, yeah, somewhere right here. Let me root this stuff. And for this one I went to the M15 because I had no clue what could happen, but the M15 had a nice untested rate candle. Here you can see that. M50 sweep, MSB, M50 sweep right there. M50 market structure break was here. Right there. And I marked out this level here. Right there. And I wanted to see price tap into this level, give me a M1 setup to set it down on news release, because in New York there was a CPI news which I just explained, and it usually comes with nice volatility. So I wanted to short from an M1 setup inside this M15 rate candle, and I also posted in the group in advance as a signal. Let me go to the M1 real quick, and let me mark out the news release because it was on, yeah, it was right there on 2:30. So I was waiting for that. I was waiting for it to come, and here you can see that we had a M5 sweep. M5 sweep into the M15 rate candle. This level here, M50 rate candle. Let me just auto real quick. M50 rate candle, M5 rate within, right there. And I zoomed into the M1 because I was going to be aggressive with it. I marked out the M1 rate candle right there. Here was the M1 break and mark structure. Right there. So I had my limits in this level. And my limits in this level for shorts. So I was expecting a move like this, and then a push lower. And then let me play it out real quick because a news release was at 2:30. And when news is aligning like this with the technicals, it's usually a win for me. So let me play it. Now you can see a very deep wick. Very deep wick. Let me just go back one more candle. You can see how price came into it, and then it pushed lower, TP'd me out, it even slipped me out a little bit for 4R, and then you can see it wicked very low and then pushed higher. So my TP was hit before it reversed. So that was it basically. Nice move as well. 4R trade was this one. Let me open it real quick. View original. Yeah, you can see here's my entry, and here's my exit. My TP was at 3R right there, and then it slipped me out for 4R. And then what was basically it for the day. At that point I closed my charts and I was done because I had 2 wins on one day. I was very grateful for that. That was it basically. This trading started here after this vertical line. So this was Wednesday trading. Daily opened, and from that point price only was only pushing up. And for some this may be a mess, but for me it was very clean stacking of breaker zones. Here the M5 rate, M5 market structure break right there. So I marked this level out here when I woke up, but this level was too wide for me to use, so I was looking for a stack. You can see how price rated another low. Market structure break right there, and here we had M5 fractal stack. And when M5 is stacking like this, I'm always involved because the strike rate is so high. I can't ignore these kind of setups. And when M5 stacks like this, I also ignore the time zone session things because it's it's just free money for me, or not free money, but the odds are in my favor in this in these kind of scenarios. So yeah, M5 fractal stack. I found this zone a bit too wide to use. I think it was 3.2 pips, but I think I could get a better entry, so I was looking for a low within, and here we had a M5 low resting. So I was just hoping for price to raid this low and push up. So I set my limits at the low with the stops below. And here you can see how price raided the low. I don't think it raided on FXCM, but on MT4 it took the low out, and then you can see how price pushed up very nicely. Let me draw this tool real quick, like this. And you can see I got my entry, and 3R was hit very quick. Tap in and push away. A nice start of the day as well, because it was London Open. It was just before London Open, you see that, because London Open starts at 8 AM, which is right here. So I got my entry a bit before London Open, but I just explained that when M5 fractal stacking like this, I ignore the session times and I just take my risk. And here was my entry, 0 drawdown, stops below, and it pushed up for 3R very nicely. So quick little trade there. And what I also want to mention, because we had this grind here, right? And on the daily close, we had a market structure break. See that here? So with a daily market structure break, so the day after, I'm always looking for longs on London Open. When the daily breaks up, I look for longs on London Open, and when the daily breaks down, I look for shorts in London Open. And especially when M5 confirms this ID with the stack, I was all over this. So I have my limit there. I was kind of lucky because it could also just tap the M5 top of the breaker zone and push away, but I just wanted the M5 low because I could get my 3R much quicker, and it happened. So that was it for the market recap. So 4 trades. Here it was the proof of the trade real quick. You can see full screen, no, the original. You can see how I entered the low right there, stops below, and then you can see the original, how price pushed away, tapping my TP right there. So a quick 3R. Yeah, so I took 4 trades, one on Monday, one on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and one on Wednesday. 3 of my wins came in London Open and 1 in New York Open. So yeah, that was it basically. So that was it for the market recap. If you still have any questions about the terms I'm using, I would recommend to rewatch the entire syllabus one more time, because all the things I am using are explained in the syllabus. And if there are still some things you don't understand, you can always reach out in the group, in the technical analysis related channels. You can ask questions 24/7, and we are here to reply and help you evolve as a trader. So yeah, have a great trading week all, and I will catch you guys and girls and the group. Ciao.